Now, how did little Shirley Temple, the star of the silver screen, end up here in Czechoslovakia as the ambassador? Well, it wasn't a direct route, that's for sure, but I picked up a lot of experiences along the way that led me down that path. But my parents and I, we were invited to the Academy Awards, the Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Academy, and it was on February 27th of 1935. I was sitting there, bored, silly, playing with my napkin when I heard my name called out. So I got up, like I'd seen the other actors do, and went up to the stage. My mother and father, they were following me. The man who gave me this little Oscar, a miniature one, he said that I was being given it because I had brought more happiness to millions of children and millions of adults than any other child of her years in the history of the world. And they gave me a miniature statue. I turned to my mother and I said, "Can we go home now?" And they said, "Oh, she doesn't understand what it's about." But I really did. After all, our president, Franklin Roosevelt, has said, "As long as we have Shirley Temple, our country will be all right." For just 15 cents, an American can go to a movie and see the smiling face of a baby and forget all his troubles. If I had done all that, why wasn't my statue as big as, or bigger than everybody else's? It wasn't until 1985 that I was finally given one of those full-size Oscars after being in over 40 movies and 50 television productions. But I picked up a lot of information, a lot of experiences, as I told you, along the way that led me to be a diplomat. I was a diplomat in training. I learned a lot from some of my co-stars. Bill Bojangles Robinson. He was my favorite dance partner. He was my friend. He had this little portable staircase that collapsed that we would practice our dance on. He was in The Little Colonel with me also. Do you remember that famous dance that we did up and down the staircase? We practiced that for a week over and over again until we got it just perfect. We were making film history because we were the first interracial couple to hold hands and dance together on the silver screen. I stopped making movies. I was ready to live in the real world. That's what meant more to me. In 1967, I ran for Congress from my home state of California. I didn't win, but I let it be known that I was able and willing to be in public service. And there were several presidents who took me up on that offer. The very first one was Richard Nixon. He called me one day and asked me if I would like to be the delegate to the United Nations representing the United States. I was overjoyed because I would be following in the footsteps of one of my heroes, Eleanor Roosevelt, the president's wife. I saw her bent over a barbecue grill. She had a large barbecue fork in her hand, flipping lamb chops. And the urge came over me that I could not resist. I reached into my little lace purse and I pulled out my favorite toy, a slingshot. I reached down and got a pebble, I loaded it, and I let go. The First Lady's arm flew up in the air, she looked like the Statue of Liberty, while the other hand smoothed the area that I had attacked her. And she didn't look around to see who had done it, but the Secret Service agents, they were everywhere looking to see who this perpetrator might be. When I got back to my hotel room, my mother let me have it in the same area where I had attacked the First Lady. Shirley Temple opens up a lot of doors for Shirley Temple Black. But once those doors are opened, I have to do the job or those doors will be shut. So the doctor will make the incision, but I will make the decision as to what is done to my body. It changed the way women were treated in breast cancer from then on. They woke me up, and I found that it was malignant. I did indeed have breast cancer. So I decided to have a modified radical mastectomy. It was my choice. In my hospital room, I invited in the newspaper and the radio, the journalists, so that they could report to the nation about what had happened. And I urged women to do monthly self-breast examinations. And if they found anything, if they suspected anything might be wrong, to immediately go to their doctors, not to be embarrassed or ashamed, because if caught early, then there was a cure. This was before Betty Ford or many of the other celebrities were speaking out about breast cancer. And my idea of being a diplomat might not have been like other diplomats. I would invite Chinese and Russian into my home for a party where we would play ping pong, table tennis, or we would watch movies. At a time when they were our enemies then, I was able to establish relationships with them. I also befriended Miloš Freeman, and he told me that I should give a birthday party for Václav Havel. In order to do that, we had to put him in Freeman's trunk of his car to sneak him in underneath the eyes of the STB into my residence to have a birthday party. Just last year, the students started gathering peaceful demonstrations, but they were attacked by the police. Within 3 days, 500,000 people had gathered in Wenceslas Square. I saw them as they were jingling their keys, which had a twofold meaning. It meant open the doors to us and go home. We don't want you here anymore. I stood in an archway, afraid for my fear that something would happen to me for my safety. Within a week, November 24th, the communist leadership had all resigned. November 29th, they eliminated the language in the Constitution that made the Communist Party the ruling party, thus ending communism, at least in the Constitution. December 29th, Václav Havel was elected by the Federal Assembly as the president of Czechoslovakia. I accompanied him just a few months ago, along with Michael Zhontovsky, to the United States so that I could stand behind him and show the legitimacy of his presidency. Yes?
I have 2 questions. I would like to know something about why Shirley should join politics. What made her do that? And the second question is about your background. Are you a historian or?
She said, politicians are actors. Performers have to please a large audience, and politicians have to please a large audience as well. So she didn't feel that it was that big of a transition to move from one to the other. She became active in Republican politics. We had 2 dominant parties in the United States, the Republican and the Democrat. And so she was active in that from the time she was very young, actually, in her early 20s. She did a lot of fundraising. So she went out there and promoted Richard Nixon. She was one of his supporters for president. And so she knew a lot of him that way. She met Henry Kissinger at a party. She was talking about Namibia, and he was astounded because he didn't even know she could pronounce the word. And he, of course, was instrumental in her becoming the ambassador. One of the questions that I asked Charlie and Susan separately, when I'm portraying her as the ambassador to Czechoslovakia, if somebody in the audience said, would you do a little dance routine that you did, from your youth, would she have done it? Both of them separately said no, she would not have done it. Charlie came to me later and said, if Mom would have done it, she would have done a really bad job. She wouldn't have been a good dancer. I also asked him about Ambassador Hall. He said, well, funny you should ask me that, because just before Shirley left, there was an arts festival that she and Václav Havel chaired together. Do you know what the art festival was? I do not know.
I don't remember.
Okay, well, someone asked her then if she would do one of the little routines, and she did. so I told Charlie this the next time I saw him, and he looked at me and says, yeah, but she was leaving.